You've probably heard this term ego death floating around, right? It sounds pretty intense, mystical, maybe even a little bit scary. But what is actually happening inside our brains when that very feeling of me seems to just dissolve? Okay, let's really get into it and separate the science from the speculation.
So, first things first, you've got to understand that your sense of being a continuous self, that little voice in your head, all your memories, your entire identity, it isn't just a given. It's actually a super complex, full time construction project that your brain is actively running every single second of the day.
So, what happens when the architect of that self decides to take a coffee break? What does that feel like? And more importantly, what can we possibly learn from it? That is the big question we are digging into today.
Now, the experience we're talking about, this whole dissolution of self, is often triggered by a very specific chemical key, one that unlocks some of the brain's most profound and hidden mechanisms. And that key is psilocybin.
Here's a cool fact. Psilocybin itself doesn't actually do anything when you first ingest it. It's what's called a prodrug. Basically, your body has to do a little work first. Your metabolism kicks in, and it quickly converts it into the molecule that does all the heavy lifting, psilocybin. And this is where it gets really interesting. Psilocybe's secret is that it's a master of disguise. It looks so much like serotonin, one of your brain's most important neurotransmitters, that it can slide right into the brain's serotonin receptors. It especially loves a receptor called the 5-HT2A, and hitting that specific lock is what unleashes its powerful psychedelic effects. Okay, so to understand how this chemical key really works, we need to meet the conductor of your inner world. There's this brain system, and it's called the default mode network.
Think of the default mode network, or DMN for short, as the part of your brain that lights up when you're not really focused on anything outside of you. It's the hub for daydreaming, thinking about the past, worrying about the future, pretty much anything that revolves around me, myself, and I. You could say it's the neurological home of your ego.
So you'd probably assume that a wild psychedelic experience is caused by, I don't know, cranking up brain activity, right? Well, you'd be wrong. And this is the absolute key takeaway. Brain scans show that psilocybin dramatically reduces blood flow and connectivity inside the DMN. The conductor of the orchestra suddenly gets very, very quiet.
And with the conductor taking a break, what happens? The orchestra starts to improvise. All these different brain regions that normally don't talk to each other start firing up new temporary connections. The whole rigid hierarchy of the brain just melts away, and what emerges is a state that people describe as more unified, more interconnected. The boundaries of yourself literally start to blur at the network level. Okay, so that's the neuroscience. That's the cool stuff happening on the brain scans. But what does a less hierarchical, more connected brain actually feel like? Let's connect the scans to the stories.
I mean, listen to this. That quote is from the famous religious scholar Huston Smith. He was describing his experience way back in 1962 in one of the very first psilocybin studies. A cosmic homecoming. It just gives you a sense of the sheer profundity people report when that neurological self is temporarily taken offline. And look, this isn't just about anecdotes and old stories. We have the data to back it up. In a landmark 2006 study from Johns Hopkins, a whopping 61% of people who got psilocybin reported a complete mystical experience. Compare that to just 13% in the placebo group. The effect is potent, and it is measurable. What's even crazier is how long the impact lasts. In a follow-up 14 months later, more than two-thirds of the participants, that's over 67%, rated the experience as one of the top 5 most spiritually significant moments of their entire lives. We're talking up there with the birth of a child or the death of a parent. Think about that. So this kind of profound, lasting impact has kicked off a total renaissance in research. It's moving psilocybin out of the realm of the purely mystical and squarely into the world of modern medicine. And the timeline of this revival is just stunning. It really all blasted off with that 2006 Johns Hopkins study. But since then, it's been a whirlwind. We've seen major recommendations to reclassify the drug, the first federal grant for this kind of research in over half a century, and just study after study showing these powerful, lasting effects. And the list of potential uses is just getting longer and longer. Researchers are now seriously studying if this experience can help us treat some of our most stubborn mental health challenges. I mean, we're talking major depression, addiction to tobacco and opioids, PTSD, anxiety. The list goes on. When it comes to depression, the results have been, honestly, mind-blowing. Multiple trials have shown that just 1 or 2 doses can lead to these rapid, huge, and sustained drops in depressive symptoms. Some studies are even showing these effects can last for up to a year.
Okay, but this next part is absolutely essential to understand. It is never just about the drug. This isn't a magic pill. In every single one of these clinical trials, success hinges on combining psilocybin with psychotherapy, all within a carefully controlled and supportive environment. This idea of set and setting is everything. So, this is where it all comes together. The therapeutic idea links directly back to that ego death we started with. Think about it. For someone who's trapped in the rigid, looping thoughts of depression, where that DMN is often stuck in overdrive, temporarily dissolving that sense of self can be like hitting a giant reset button. It offers this incredibly rare chance to step outside those destructive patterns and see everything from a totally new perspective.
And that really brings us to our final thought for today. This research isn't just about promising new treatments, it forces us to ask these massive fundamental questions. If the very structure of our self in the brain can be so profoundly and safely altered, what does that really tell us about who we are? It suggests that the boundary between me and the rest of the world might just be far more flexible than we ever imagined.